Welcome back to the Gun Collective podcast. My name is John Patton. Boys and girls, I know I keep beating the crap out of this, but we got another great guest. I know you guys are so disappointed that we keep having good guest after good guest. I know you're so sad about it and disappointed. But first, the sponsors, Camarado, Camorado. Go get yourself some Sea Smoke Camo. That is the official TGC colorway. It's awesome. They also have stuff for just about every other area in the U.S. Go check it out. That's Camarado.com. Also check out Vertex, Vertx.com, and use the code TGC to get yourself a discount. I really, really like their Ready Pack. I love their sling bags. The SOCP is, it's like a little fanny pack thing, but I like to crossbody carry it with a tiny little gun. And honestly, it's one of my favorite ways to carry these days. Check it out, Vertx.com/ no, wait, its code is TGC with them. Yeah, you guys know. You listen all the time. I appreciate you. Today's guest is a gargantuan human. We've got Mike from Tactical Considerations. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you? You say that with such authority. You're like, the podcast.
Well, you know, somebody's got to take control of this bitch.
So you're talking about verdicts and their SOCP. Do you actually know what SOCP stands for?
I used to know, don't know. Tell me all about it.
So that was actually designed by the individual. I think he's the actual guy or was part of the team that came up with the Special Operations Combatives Program. That's what SOCP stands for.
Shit, that's fancy.
So that pack is very specifically set up to have fixed blades and all kinds of knives in that back section where all the different angled slots are.
Right.
So you can effectively draw blades and fight hand to hand. There's some other stuff built into that most people don't know about. I happen to know a guy that had something to do with that.
I'm sure you do. You have, for those that don't know, Mike has a storied career. We'll call it that. Since this is your first time on the show, for the people that may not be familiar with you somehow, can you tell people the 30-second version of what Tactical Considerations is?
It's a monkey that instead of peeling bananas plays with guns. So literally, I'm just another guy that loves guns, loves the Second Amendment, loves freedom of speech. And I managed to turn a hobby and a passion into now it's actually my full-time career.
I mean, that's the dream, right?
100%. Like I literally got off the range 45 minutes ago, and I still probably smell like a gorilla's butt, but you know, it's Arizona. It's hot, man.
What's the temperature like right now in Arizona? I have no idea.
It's probably, I think it's only in the upper 90s today, but I was out there since 6 a.m. and it's now 2 o'clock. I'm like sunburned everywhere. And you've been here. You stayed at my house, man. You know it's hot.
Yeah, it's very hot. It was 38 degrees here this morning. Just for comparison, on the East Coast, it was 38 degrees this morning. So I think you're underselling yourself, at least from my perspective. I've seen you shoot, and being a big dude, it gives you an advantage, but you have an understanding of guns from a fundamental standpoint, and because you've had firearms in your career since you started working, essentially, right? Like some variation, you had guns in your career. How much can you share about what you have done for a living over the years?
Yeah, so my first job where I was issued a gun started in 1998. So my entire adult life, I've worn a bulletproof vest and carried a gun somewhere in the world. I went in the Army in 98. I was lucky enough that I went in as an 11 X-ray guy, which meant I was going to be blasted out to the military in some form of infantry spectrum. Like 4 weeks into basic training, they told us you're going to be mechanized guys. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. I just want to go be infantry military guy somewhere. About 2 weeks after that, me and a few other guys got approached by a drill sergeant, the first sergeant, and said, hey, we'd like you guys to go try out for this right after you get done with basic training. And I didn't know all of what I was getting into, but I knew from what I had seen on the news when I was very young during Somalia that having the opportunity to go to the Ranger Battalions was very cool. And I didn't have the ability to get a contract entry with that. So that I got that opportunity in basic training. And when I graduated basic, I went right to airborne school. And then once you're done with airborne school, once you get your security clearance, because since I entered that program late, I had to wait a couple weeks for my initial clearance to come through. These big ass dudes in all black shirt and these black little tiny running shorts that say, 75th on them, they show up and you load a truck and that truck takes off and maybe one dude's off that truck that came to pick you up and it is just a balls out run to the barracks, the next station. And you're in regular fatigues and boots and they just haul ass and you just don't quit the run. That's the only thing. Just don't quit the run. Because they take off and I was like, I think we're supposed to be following them. And we just started running. So awesome. Did that, got done with that. I wasn't too stupid and I was all kinds of the right stupid and I was pretty physically fit. So I ended up being the honor graduate of the indoctrination program. It's called RASP now, but it was called RIP back then. Then I went up to second bat and that's where I did my time. Got out of there and I had I think 2.5, it took me about 36 months to finish college because I was taking college in high school, graduated college, and I was actually going to go back in. I had figured out quickly that, I thought I was going to be a banker or a finance guy. And I realized that cubicle life wasn't for me.
You know what I think? I picture the dad from The Incredibles when I think of you as a banker, this giant guy in a suit.
Yeah. It was the company I worked for, Wells Fargo Financial, was a great company, amazing leaders there, just amazing leaders there. But it was just not for me. So it actually made the decision to go back in. I was going to go in under the SF Baby program. So because the GWAT was so kicked off, this is right around 2006.
Okay. So, Iraq, Afghanistan, all of those, half the country was focused on that.
100%. So I decided I was graduating college in I think 3 or 4 months. And I was like, okay, as soon as I'm done, I'm like on wheels up, I'm gone. I'd already told my mom, my parents, I had made calls. I had talked to the recruiters and was like, at this point they had stood up the SF Baby program to where you could go in as an 18 X-ray and you go, I would just have to go back through basic and then I'd have to go do a refresh at airborne and then I would have to go through the pipeline. And I want to say it was 60 days before I graduated college, my father was almost killed. Just not too far from his house. And I was living with him at the time while I was in school. And that kind of diverted. Yeah. And that diverted. I showed up on scene. It was illegal aliens driving drunk, ran a stop sign and almost killed him. He was ejected from the vehicle, no fucking seatbelt, bent the steering wheel of this Dodge Ram into the column, over, down, bounced off, both airbags went out the window and was walking around when I got there. He was bleeding and shit. He's a tough old man. So this ginormous man, when I say ginormous, this dude's 6'8", played defensive line for UCLA. He was actually the colonel of DPS out here. Heston Silbert was a commander at the time. And he sees me and I had some kind of indicia from the Ranger battalions on. And he's like, hey man, starts talking to me. And it's like, you want to be a cop? And I'm like, hell no. But so that happened, and I ended up having to take care of my dad because they released him to me right there. He didn't go to the hospital. He's like, I'm not going to the hospital. He refused.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I ended up bandaging his wounds. He ended up having a blood vessel that was cut in his head. That I had to take him into the hospital to get sutured up because it wasn't healing. Day 3, I'm like, hey, you're losing too much fucking fluid, bro. We got to take you to the hospital. So
wow, just wow.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what that would be like.
Yeah, it was crazy. So when all that occurred, it kind of reset my frame of thinking, and I was like, well, maybe there's some work to be done here at home rather than, overseas. So I went and applied with the city that I worked for up until the past couple of weeks, and that's where I worked for the past 18 years doing law enforcement, everything from patrol to supervision. So it was kind of kind of an odd transfer because, you know, I was pretty dead set on going back in. But once that effect was in my family from seeing all the lawlessness here at home, I was kind of like, well, maybe I should do some work around here instead of leaving, which is one of those things where you think about it over the years, you know, because a lot of my boys were still in. A lot of guys I know everyone I know is pretty much retired out now. Those guys some of them were sergeant majors, and some of the officers were, one got a star, was a general. So it was pretty crazy to see some of those guys promote through their careers.
Do you ever have any regret for not going back?
You know, I wouldn't say regret. I mean, you know, I made that decision knowingly, but you always have that feeling like, should I have maybe done a little bit more time, or should I have maybe done a little bit more of this, because I could have always went and done this later.
Sure.
So I don't per se think it's regret as much as it was, you just want to be there with the crew. You want to be there with the boys.
A little bit of, what do they call it? FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah, because I get calls, you know, dudes, like I remember when the guys first came back from Afghanistan and stuff, and I get a call, and then they come back from Iraq, I get a call, and then all the way up through talking to guys that were still in, they were like, oh, I came back from Syria. And I'm like, Jesus, man, like just everywhere, right?
That is a different kind of lifestyle. It's a different, it's the intensity of what those folks do is pretty wild. But you also were a police officer for how long?
18 years.
18 years.
Yeah.
I would assume that in those 18 years, especially being in Arizona, that you saw all kinds of crazy shit, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's
I know
anytime you
you
think
might
you've
not be
seen
able
it
to talk
all.
about it all, you know, cases and
Oh,
whatnot.
it's all public info now, man. But
Okay.
I mean, if you think you've seen everything, just fucking wait, man. You're gonna find some dude rolled up in a fucking comforter like a burrito, eating his own shit, literally. Like
What
there's
the
just
fuck?
no ends. Yeah, no ends to the weird shit you're gonna see, dude. It's insane.
What was that dude like, just on meth or something? Like, what was that about?
It's just crazy.
Oh, okay.
Just eating his own shit, crazy.
I mean, that's a different kind of crazy. I'm thankful that I've never encountered that. I'm thankful.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you said,
Crazy.
Go ahead.
No, I just said it's crazy. Yeah, he's just too much.
You said you were a police officer. That implies, and I know this to be true, but I think it's important for the audience to know this. You have been fortunate enough to sort of rotate out. Is that right? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I I think October 1st was actually my first day of retirement.
Wow.
So yeah, it's so super, like it hasn't even sunk in yet, really, because I'm super busy with everything that's going on here. But you know, there was let's just say that me and my agency came to a rather large disagreement over First Amendment stuff, specifically with my social media, and I decided that I was no longer going to work for them for. That was like the final straw.
Sure.
There was all kinds of other stuff, and don't get me wrong, there's like, you're always going to have disagreements with your employer, and you're always going to have to do shit you don't want to do because it's not the sexy call or the fun call or the foot pursuit or the car chase or something like that. But I think there were several different things that kind of happened in close proximity. So like COVID obviously was one of the big things where a lot of us started to see that probably things were being done with law enforcement that we didn't agree with.
Yeah. Oh, big time. Nationwide, it was
100%.
like somebody flipped a switch and everybody turned on the police.
Well, and it wasn't necessarily that. Well, there was that, but a lot of it
Yes,
was self-imposed. Like a lot of that stuff was self-imposed. Like I didn't think that it would affect Arizona like it did, but the governor at the time, Ducey, I call him Douchey. My chief at the time was friends with him,
okay.
and the shit they were doing with gyms out here like shutting gyms down and shutting this. Like, I'm like, what are we doing? We're not health inspectors. Not only that, but like, why would you shut down a business where people are trying to stay healthy? That are your tax base that support law enforcement, that support the city structure, and they make for a healthy environment, and they're only doing good things out there. So when the governor came out with this order that you couldn't have a, well, one, he was fucking stupid, or his lawyers were stupid because they couldn't word the letter right. So me, mischievously looking through the letter, I'm like, well, it says in here that you can't operate an indoor fitness facility. So they were sending cops to go tell gym owners to shut down and shit, or they were going to write them a criminal citation.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So enough officers finally were like, yeah, I'm not fucking doing that. So then they made the supervisors go do it, which was me at the time. So I went to some of the gyms, and the gyms all had lawyers from letters they'd hold up to you because we're recording it on cameras.
Sure.
And they'd be like, hey, I'm just supposed to give you this. I'm like, hey, man, I'm like, I have to read you this letter. It's the policy my department has set. I was like, but pay very close attention to this line where it says indoor fitness facilities. I'm like, do you own the parking lot? Yeah. Take your boys outside, man. Nobody's going to give you any harm. They wanted to, they wanted to investigate me, and they were super pissed off, command staff at the time, because I told people they could go work out in the parking lot and that wouldn't be a violation of the indoor fitness facility governor's order. Like my whole thought, and I'm talking to the lawyers at the department, I'm talking to commanders, I'm like, hey, guess what trumps a governor's order? The fucking Constitution. Like, I shouldn't have to tell you guys this. Like, why are you doing this to the citizens of our own city? So there was stuff like that going on, and that just, you saw a lot of people leave law enforcement. Like, I have friends that just quit, outright quit, and said, I'm not doing this. And then like admin, right, administrative results, Aaron, they forced his department. He worked right down the road from me with my buddy at another agency. They were going to make them get the jab, and he just said, fuck you, I'll quit. And he did. He's like, I'm not doing that. So there was things like that that were going on that I just didn't agree with. And it, like I said, it wasn't as bad here in Arizona as it was other places. So that was very disheartening for me as a law enforcement guy, because I was, as a cop, it's like, yes, you enforce the law, but you also have a brain to enforce the law with. Like, there's spirit of the law and there's letter of the law, right? Like, you don't have to write everybody a ticket.
You know what
You don't
is
have to,
very strange to me, because there was a time when the police were sort of a helper in the neighborhood, right? Like it was like, here, we're going to show you how to operate correctly so that you do not break the law. And then, these a bunch of people get sick, and magically laws don't exist anymore, and we're just giving power of control to all these low-level non-lawmakers. These people that are just making these sweeping changes like you're talking about. And suddenly we just have to like treat the world like a completely different thing. It's bonkers what they made police do. I remember here on the East Coast, I mean, it was a different planet. When I talked to guys like Sean in Colorado and you in Arizona, this area was a different fucking planet than what you guys had. And almost every restaurant around here had an outdoor facility. Like, they just plopped chairs on the sidewalk and said, this is now our restaurant, because they did the same shit. You can't do XYZ inside. So all of the restaurants, it was hilarious in Philly because they took up half the road. It was the inside outside. It's bonkers, man. It's bonkers. What was your biggest takeaway from having to do that? Was that just like the straw that broke the camel's back, or was there like something else that made you go, I'm effing done?
Well, so that was, and like I said, it was a little different here because there was a way around some of the things that they were trying to implement. I was like, hey, work out outside.
Right.
But then when your own department gets mad at you, and I'm like, what, you're mad because I informed a citizen of their constitutional rights? Like
you're
why do you have a
fucking
problem with that?
supposed to do.
Well, but oftentimes, and not all, but oftentimes people in higher levels of leadership in police departments are oftentimes petty little wannabe tyrants. They were usually never street cops. They were usually never dudes that were out there crushing like real crime, like dudes that you don't want around your daughter kind of crime.
Mm.
like violent criminals. Most dudes that make it into command, they were never the dudes out there getting in fights with guys that look like they just got out of prison that could bench press a bus and they're committing an armed robbery. They were hiding behind a desk as an SRO or in internal affairs or some other stuff. And the very few that do make it from being like real good street cops to supervisors to lieutenant to commander to sergeant to chief or something, it's so rare. And those dudes are usually awesome to work for. But in many cases, they just weren't the best cops. They were guys that checked a lot of boxes and did a lot of administrative duties and eventually became a commander or a chief or something. And so you start to see these decisions made and they don't make sense. And I was a supervisor for 9 years. So I saw a lot of bad decisions. I had assistant chiefs come to me, "Hey, I need you to do this." And I'm like, no, we ain't doing that. That's not legal. No, I'm saying do this. And I'm like, "Oh, no." I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm giving you an order." I'm all, "Cool, take that to IA and let's see how that investigation works out."
Oh,
Just and they're so far removed from law sometimes too, because they were never really a street cop. So they fall out of like, I guess they didn't get the legal update or something.
sure.
Uh, but so that was very disheartening. And then seeing good people just leave the career. And then you have everything that happened, with Ferguson and all that stuff, which, there's always one stupid cop everywhere that does something that just everyone looks at it and is like, "Bro, you thought that was a good idea." And then, we all pay for it around the nation, right? Um, and then, I was so close to the end. I was like, all right, well, it's still a good state. And don't get me wrong, the city that I worked for, it was a really good city. They took care of their employees. They have a really close relationship with the citizens. Like the city that I worked for, we were for longer than I've been a cop, I've always had like a citizen review panel where we got in a shooting use of force. Citizens from the city actually review those.
Oh, wow.
And like, yeah, so it's most cops hear that and they have like a heart attack. They're like, "Oh my God, I would never want the average citizen judging my use of force." They want like internal affairs or another agency or something.
Sure.
We had citizen review panels because, the best disinfectant is sunlight, right? So if the citizens know, like, "Hey, this happened, here's why, here's the circumstances that led up to it," even the people on those that are maybe not the most pro cop people are like, "Yeah, I can kind of see how that happened." And then we put them through use of force scenarios too, so they can like see what's going on. So things like that generally help you. So we had a super close relationship with the public. Obviously, some of that was damaged due to everything that happened.
Right. Right.
Um,
It's
and
sort of a
then things
tainted
just,
relationship at that point.
yeah, to an extent. But again, the citizenry and the department and the city as a whole was just very kind of cohesive, live together, work together, very good. Even in the bad parts of town, generally there's a level of respect because even if someone's a criminal, you know, you don't dehumanize or demoralize them while arresting them or taking them into custody or whatever. You
Right.
treat people with a little bit of respect, even gang members or whatever. They'll give you a little bit of respect back. Like I've been in uses of force where it was like, you know, pretty decent injuries, and the person was like, let's just say their booking photo kind of looked like this because they were a little banged up, and I never had a complaint because it's usually how you talk to them. It's like, "Hey, man, why would you want to fight three of us? That's not a smart idea." And they're like, "Oh, well, I got a problem with cops, man, but that's how it is." But if
Yeah.
you treat people with respect, generally they don't have a problem with you on a personal level. They might have a problem with the law. So that's kind of how I always looked at it. So you had all those things going on. You had the Ferguson stuff going on. You had the post-COVID stuff going on. Um, and then you had a lot of guys leave during that time, which means you've got an influx of new generation.
And
Yeah.
so it's new people, and you lose that familiarity with your coworkers, and that sort of trust is gone because you don't have that with the new guys. And is correct me if I'm wrong here, but trust is a massive factor when something gets serious.
Yeah. And let's just face it, we're in the era of the dancing TikTok cops, so Um, there was a lot of that stuff going on, which I'm just like, whatever, do your thing. I don't care. But it seemed to be there was an influx of people that were more interested in being a dancing TikTok cop than they were actually being a cop.
Everybody wants to be
Um,
famous.
yeah, which I mean, I'm a social media guy. I think you can maybe see one picture of me in uniform out there. Like I don't. I always thought that was something you didn't do because that was the military. I mean, you don't post photos and take photos of in uniform and certain things, unless the agency or the department or the unit does. Or at least very rarely. But it's I'm not going to be out there in a basketball court dancing, trying to put a video up. Stupid.
I would pay money
Uh,
to see that.
yeah, no. I saw a shirt one time. I think from the guys over at the Anti-Hero podcast. He's got a shirt that says "Defund Dancing Cops."
That's great.
So all that stuff happened,
Yeah,
and
so,
then
you're going through all of these changes in the career, like the career itself that you knew and were experiencing was evolving around you, and it sounds like you weren't a big fan of that.
yeah, some of it. I mean, there were some good things, like the technology was taken off, which was awesome. There were a lot of cool things, like the camera systems and all that. So I was actually one of the first cops to ever wear a camera. Like the
Okay,
agency I worked for, we had a very close relationship with Taser Axon, and I actually had the test version of that camera like 13, 14 years ago or something now.
holy shit!
Yeah, so I've always been a huge fan of cameras because like they catch evidence for you, right? Like I've sat there and recorded burglaries before I moved in and took the person into custody. And it's like, well, I wasn't doing anything. I'm like, bro, I got you on camera burglarizing that house, man.
Yeah,
So it's amazing evidence. So there was a lot of cool technology that came into it, which made our lives a little easier. Um, if you were a shitty cop, it made your life a little harder. Being a supervisor, I saw both really good and some pretty poor decisions made on body worn camera. Good changes, some bad changes. It's just policy stuff that I didn't agree with, things like that.
sure,
Which
sure.
is that's always going to happen.
So now, that you're sort of shaking loose of that pretty recently. At the time of this recording, that's just a few weeks back that you've sort of quote unquote broken free.
Mhm.
Uh, what does that mean for like the future of tactical considerations? Because I remember it wasn't all that long ago that you got started, maybe a few years ago that you got started, and now you've got a whole shitload of subscribers and a really loyal audience. So what does that mean? Like, what are you now going to be able to do now that you can focus on it?
Well, I mean, I'm going to be able to probably make higher quality content now, so I'll have more time, which is always fun. But
I mean, I think your
I'll,
current stuff is already high quality. What do you are you like trying to do like more camera angles, longer testing? What are you thinking?
I think just like a higher quality of what I do. So there's always like a better way to shoot from a different angle or better lighting or all these things you chase as a creator. And I'm not like a photographer, videographer, any of that. I had to like self learn all that. I had to ask a ton of questions, watch a lot of YouTube videos to learn. And I'm still learning. Like every time I use a camera, I'm still learning something.
Right.
But I can look at things in a different way now, a more artistic way. And I can kind of see things where I'm like, oh man, if I had this light here, this would have looked better. Or if I had a bounce out there when I was shooting, it would have looked better. So my idea now is to just focus on making the content that I create look and sound better. Um, and if you can do that, it's obviously people will appreciate it. But on the side of that, I would like to also do more traveling. So I'll be doing more stuff in different states with different people,
What, like
just kind of more
collaboration?
collaboration stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have anybody that like you're sort of dreaming of working with? I mean, most of the gun content creators at this point. Who's like your top, say three guys that you're looking to work with?
Oh, besides you. Oh.
Ah, that's cute.
um, so I need to get up to, I need to get back up to Iowa and go do some stuff with Honest Outlaw and Pewview.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Those two. And we've been talking about it for a while. I just need to get up there. And then there'll be a lot more stuff coming out with my buddy Adrian from Sidewinder Concepts. So he's a
Okay.
Army sniper, long range guy. And I was just in Missouri with him taking a precision bolt gun class with a couple of ex-military guys and some other people.
I heard
And
about that.
that was a great class, man. Amazing class. But stuff like that, where it's kind of not only kind of cross pollinating audiences, but just having a little bit more fun. Because since I've been a full time cop forever, it's like things have always felt rushed, you
Ah, I
know.
see.
And now I can sit there and I can really methodically plan out videos. I don't have to go to the range and I'm like, oh, I've got an hour to burn down 4 guns and I have to shoot 500 rounds through this one and 300 rounds through this one. So now I can actually like focus on things a little bit more instead of having to just like get this angle, get this angle, get this angle, and then hope it all turned out, you know, and then try to fix it in post.
I mean, just from knowing you for a somewhat short period of time, I know that that's always been something you've wanted to do. So it's exciting to see you sort of let off your leash a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I have a deep appreciation for how intelligent you are when it comes to business, and watching you sort of evolve and now turn a new page into a new chapter is fucking exciting, man. I think it's gonna be really interesting. Were you ever exposed to the long range stuff when you were in the military? Was that ever something you had to do?
So I never was in the sniper section or anything. I mean, I knew guys that were, and I did some long distance stuff, but it was never anything that I really had any military formal training on besides like, hey, we're gonna go do this today, and here, put this here, and then do this. Um, and my first real, and I'm gonna say real training courses or anything that I actually started to internalize and understand and really start to think past 1,000 yards is when I took Adrian's class, that first scoped carbine class. Even though a scoped carbine, you don't think 1,000 yards, but I recently shot a mile with a 5.56 16-inch gun recently. So I'm like, there's things you can do that technically don't really happen much, but
I'm losing you a little
um,
bit, Mike. Hang on 2 seconds and let's see if the connection fixes its shit. Honestly, a 5.56 at a mile is flabbergasting. It is
right,
absolutely bonkers.
yeah,
Are you
yeah, it was,
back? Let's
yeah, I've got you good, man.
What in the world is going on?
I think you're froze up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you, man. Looks like your screen's freezing though.
Did the internet just die?
I can still see and hear you.
What the fuck?
Oh, now you're gone. Well, it looks like I'll be taking over the podcast from here.
Oops.
You back?
I think I'm back.
Yeah. Yeah, you totally disappeared, man.
Yeah, I disappeared and you disappeared on my end. I don't know what happened. It looks like the stream is still up, which is great. We'll have to see what happens on the back end. We'll have to see what happens. Hopefully, it's just going to put it all together for me.
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna find out. So we were talking about the sort of military stuff that you got exposed to, and you shot a 5.56 out to a mile, which is ridiculous.
It's on camera, so you can't deny it.
I mean, could you even hear the hit?
No, we had cameras down there. I mean, we were in Utah, so it was out there with X2 Development Group,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and we were using their new Trident barrels with Jeremiah. If you guys don't know Jeremiah, he's like a world class extreme long range guy. And they were like, "Hey, we're going to take these guns to a mile." It didn't hurt that I had a very well-known SEAL sniper calling my shots either.
Yeah,
Like a
that
very
usually
well
does
known
help.
dude. And then I had Adrian there from Sidewinder Concepts as well, and we all poked a mile. Everybody hit,
With a
but I got
16-inch
one.
5.56.
Yeah, but I got one dead center in the 12-inch red painted circle, and I was like, yes. But it's, I mean, unrealistic, right? Like you're putting 30 rounds down range to get 3 or 4 hits, right? There's so much luck because you've gone supersonic, transonic, subsonic, and remember your target is this if you're looking straight at it, right? But at that distance, the bullet is coming in from a trajectory like a fucking mortar. So all that the bullet is seeing is this. It's only seeing the top edge of the target as it comes in, right? So unless you tilt your target back, think of that angle, right?
Yeah, you don't get
This
a square hit. Yeah.
versus that. So there's ways to game it too. But a good friend of mine was a sniper in 3rd Battalion, and he owned a company called JJ Rock with Rock McMillan, which has now been purchased by Dylan, which is Dylan Rifles. So those Super XL actions you've seen, that
Yeah.
was my buddy John's company. Like I have the last action with his name on it.
Now it makes a lot more sense.
Right. So he had been telling me, "Oh, you got to do this, you got to do this," and he competed in the King of 2 Miles. So I had been to training companies for events and just didn't learn anything there. And then finally, I took that class, and everything made sense. Like that dude broke down that information to the point where I sat there and I finally understood the basics of ballistics and how to do win calls and how to set up a solution and a calculator and an app, and then how to true for either velocity or BC, depending on what time you're working on, how to set up your range cards. Like, hey, I'm going to Missouri. Well, cool. I'll make my range card from Missouri right here in Arizona based on the elevation, the pressures, and then I'll use that range card when I get there, and it's 100% perfect. All you do is confirm 0, start shooting. So I can, and setup too. Like, if your rifle isn't set up, I mean, like perfect, which we all think we know what we're doing, you got no fucking clue until somebody who really knows what they're doing tells you, yeah, it ain't gonna work. They just take one look and they're like, that's not gonna work. And you're like, what are you talking about? It's perfect. Like I got this, I got a Steiner on here. I got this, I got that. And they're like, no, 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 that is not set up for you. That kind of learning and then having the right ammo, like my boys at Badlands right here, sick ammo, dude. That
Were,
makes all the difference in the world.
were you shooting 77 grain, or was it something else at a mile? What were you shooting?
That was out of the box PMC 77 grain X-Tac.
Blah, ugh. The PMC stuff is not bad, right? Like the
No.
77 grain XX, not bad ammo. It's just not great. It's okay in my experience. You know what I found, Mike, that I think you'll find interesting is I've actually had better accuracy across more guns with like a 69 grain as opposed to a 77. Do you see that in your testing ever?
I mean, I could see that depending on the barrel length and the twist rate,
Sure.
right? Because, and that's another thing, like, what's your twist rate? What's your barrel length? What kind of velocities you're going to get? And then also, where is that barrel at in its lifespan? I love the 75 grain NAS 3 casings, so the shell shock casings that Badlands makes. Those things are spicier than shit because they can handle pressure. And the standard deviation I got out of those on a chronograph was like 2.5.
You're shitting me.
Insanely low SD.
Wow.
Yeah, those shell shock cases are giving a way lower SD. So it's like,
what was the company? It was Badlands Munitions. Is that what it is?
Badlands Munitions. So they're actually right here in Queen Creek. And they make 77, 75, and they make an 85 grainer now for like an 18 or a 20.
Yeah.
And
is
that ammo
that like a single
slaps.
feed? Does that work out of a magazine?
Oh yeah, it's all scoped carbine.
No shit. Because
Yeah.
I know a lot of the heavier 223 diameter bullets are longer, so they don't feed well out of a standard magazine. But if they got that to work, hell yeah.
Yeah, no, and trust me, it works. I was shooting it today. Little groups. But no, they've got it down, but they test the shit out of their ammo.
That's great.
Like we took that 75 grain, we took that Geisley 14.5.
Yep.
And we're shooting at 1,000, and our hit rate was like 80%. Like it was just stupid. Now, granted, there was no wind that day. That's a big determining factor.
Yeah.
and the plate was 24 by 24. But to take a 14.5 with that kind of hit ratio, and I think I wasn't doing like triple taps like bang, 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 but I could send 3 rounds, and by the time the first one hit, the next two would come in with a
Would you
14.5.
would you agree that once you understand some of the fundamentals and you know how to get set up like behind a gun, would you agree that it starts to become easy to hit at, 500, 600, 7 all the way out to a grand? Would you agree that?
So a guy once said to me, if you can't hit 1,000 yards inside of 6 rounds from 0 to 1,000, you just need to put your gun down. And I was like, bro, you crazy? It takes me more than 6 rounds to zero. And now my goal every time I go out, whether it's a 6.5 PRC or whatever, is I laser zero at night. So I got one of those Wheeler magnetic lasers that you stick on the end of the muzzle. I go at night. I have a designator that's 100 yards away from my back door. I dial in that optic to that laser. I go out. I'll pull a couple rounds, and I don't chase zero anymore. I used to chase zero like crazy. I will get close enough, and then I'm going straight to 1,000 yards to true. And I've done it in videos before where I'm filming it. And it took like a Mossberg MVP, their Patriot Tactical, went from 0 to 1,000 yards on a tripod in the first round, right? Like, so once you know kind of what you're doing and you know not to like chase certain things like you usually would, then you'll start getting hits faster because you're going to true that data downrange anyways. So why waste all the time at 100 yards zeroing when you're going to hit a true out there somewhere and you're going to refine that at distance? Some guys, they'll sit there on a bench rest or whatever and print these like perfect tiny little groups, and they're basically not even touching the rifle at that point. It's locked into something so hard.
Yep.
Get a good solid zero on a prone at 100 yards, send that thing 6, 7 to 1,000 yards and true that thing in, and you're going to get hits. Now, where that becomes a little bit different is when you're doing like ELR, right? So if you're doing like a mile plus, that's a very different thing where you need to have a zero that's like the zero of all zeros. Because your zero is going to change through the life of that barrel. It's going to change through the life of that lot of ammunition. It's going to change based on heat, especially if you're running a bolt gun, or excuse me, a gas gun, because as that bolt's picking up that next round and it's going into that chamber that's ever hotter and hotter, what happens when you heat up molecules and things, right? It gets spicier. Things want to move faster. It's the same thing with the powder in your ammo. That's why when you see guys shooting, it's all of a sudden their ejection patterns here, and then all of a sudden it's getting looking like it's overgassed or something because the ammo is heating up so fast that it's getting spicier. It's getting hotter. So you start to learn those things, and then you learn when to stop, right? Like, okay, probably shouldn't keep shooting. My ammo is starting to do weird things, or I'm probably going to, I'm getting barrel droop now because I just put 3 mags through my gas gun running the rack of plates out there or something,
Yeah, we've seen our fair share of heat deflection across
Yeah.
most of these rifles behind me. Most of them will do it. It's very rare that a gun can shoot a lot of ammo repetitively and not deflect. Like they just
Correct.
kind of all do.
Yeah.
So now that you're getting into the extended range stuff, not just like inside of 400 or 500 yards, whatever. Now that you're really starting to push that and really starting to understand that, are you going to regularly incorporate that? Do you have a plan? Because when I think of what your channel is, the things that I go to are ARs and pistols, and
Yeah.
you're like, that's what a lot of people I think know you for. How are you going to incorporate the precision stuff?
So, the AR stuff and pistol stuff, that's always the baseline, right? That's what 99% of people are going to carry. But the scoped carbine, like once you get somebody into a scoped carbine, it's the gateway drug, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I didn't even realize this, but me and Adrian from Sidewinder were talking, and I've known him barely just over a year. So for that class, I built this like very nice ADM UIC Mod 2 18-inch Criterion barrel SPR, like Steiner T6XI, everything I wanted, right? Like all the high end stuff. And I was like, I just want one for this class. I need to learn distance. And
That's what they
that's
want.
how it started. And then I've got like 3 or 4 different SPRs. I picked up a Mark 12 yesterday from Badlands with their, I got, a huge KRG Whiskey 3 chassis with that JJ Rock action. I got 2 Aero Precision Soluses. I got a couple of Bergaras, 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 PRC, 308. Like this gate opens up and all of a sudden you're like, well, because here's how I look at it. Like it's just the next thing to chase, the next hobby,
Yep.
the next fun thing. And the cool thing about precision is, yes, it's expensive, but you can go out and have a lot of fun with one magazine as compared to guys shooting into trash with an AR in the desert, right? Like
that's so foreign out here. Like mag
yeah.
dumps into trash. So we don't have spots like that.
Oh, it's everywhere in Arizona. Like people just, especially the AK guys, just mag dumping into trash. Just
All right.
yeah.
So, do you have a favorite of all those things yet? Like, is there one that you like to shoot more often?
Oh yeah, the Whisper Pickle, that green ADM that I first built for Scope Carbine.
The
Uh,
Whisper Pickle.
I call it the Whisper Pickle. Yeah, because it's anodized green, from ADM, their color.
Right.
And I built that thing, and then I made some changes to it, and it's just 100% dialed in. Like I absolutely love that gun. The 100%, everything from the trigger to the color, the barrel, the B5 adjustable PRS stock. Like I have that thing so set up now that every time I even look at it in the safe, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna stick my round in your chamber, you know.
I think that's rad, man. I have tried unsuccessfully to get people interested in that sort of shooting. I haven't figured out the formula for how to make a good long range video. And if anyone can figure that out, it's you. And I'm excited to see what you're able to do. I would really like to see you go hang out with Gavin from Ultimate Reloader.
I would love that.
Gavin is like an encyclopedia of
Yeah.
knowledge.
I don't think most
interesting.
Yeah, I don't think most people understand like that dude is like mad scientist smart.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you
Like
been to his place yet? Have you been up there?
no, I haven't. I have not.
Okay.
But I would really like to go. He's showing me pictures of the new like the pool that's built into the side of the mountain. I'm like, oh, I hate you.
So we did the Rock Chuck Olympics at his place, and
Okay.
I did co-commentating with him, and it was like their shooting spot is just jaw dropping,
Yeah.
just jaw dropping. What do you think you like of all of the things that you've learned across the many years of carrying a gun? What do you think you've taken away in regards to what the gun industry is currently doing? Like you have all this experience. Are your expectations being met? Are new guns pushing enough to get you excited?
I think some companies are doing it right because there are companies that are finally giving the consumer what they want when it comes to capacity, recoil control, like with all the comped pistols that are coming out now.
Can you give examples of what stands out to you?
Yeah, so you've got like think about the size of like a SIG-X macro with 17 round capacity, or the Hellcat Pro comp where it's 17 rounds and it's comped. Same thing with the uh, even Wilson has their new SFX9 comp ported thing, which is like sick. I got to shoot that thing. So companies are finally taking cues from the aftermarket and integrating those things into a production line pistol up front, which maybe is it's not as aggressive as the aftermarket can give you, but it gives you better stuff up front. And I'm a huge fan of that because I always want more for less, right? Or like more
Sure.
for the same, something. Um, Ammo has come a long, long way over the past 15 years.
In what way?
So take the shell shock casings, these two-piece steel rear cased shells now. Well, you get better standard deviation, you get better pressures. It can hold better pressure, so you're not going to have cage breaches at the back. The coefficients of rounds are getting better. The offering 6.5 PRC, 7 PRC, these absolute hammers of rounds that didn't exist or just weren't readily available a long time ago. And it's just gotten better and better. And then when it comes to like the rifle stuff, rifle companies just seem to be all over the place. You're either getting more of the same or you're getting something that's so different it takes you in a direction that most people are weary to go because it's so proprietary.
Like what? What would be an example of proprietary?
So look at all the new SIG stuff, obviously for the new spear and all that. You're 100%. It's like so different that most people would have to make a huge investment. Plus that ammo. I mean, you can't even get it, the 270 Fury or whatever. In fact, my understanding was they actually delivered guns in 5.56 and 308 to the military because the ammo wasn't there. So you get things like that, and then other companies, you're getting just like a basic rifle that seems to be overpriced for the modern era. So some companies are meeting that, and some companies are kind of just, I guess, still resting on their laurels to an extent, which is that's how you go the way of Colt, basically.
That's the fucking truth.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of guns coming out these days are very much a Me Too product. Like they're just not that fucking interesting. Like the comped guns, sure. There are a few companies that are doing really interesting stuff. Like we shot at GunCon this year, we shot the new Bull, which is ported and comped, which is different.
Yeah.
That's not common. Is there
good,
anything is there anything that you're like super excited about that's out right now? Like what gets your blood flowing besides that 6.5 or 300 PRC or something like that? Like what really gets you pumped?
So a thing that I've become more to not just say like, oh, bolt guns or precision, but one thing that I'm liking more and more, especially as I use them more, is the high flow cans. Right. So the suppressor technology, think of how far suppressors have come in the past 10 years to the point where you're getting like zero gas in the face and stuff like that. And you don't think about these things when you're young and dumb, but they're like, I know people that have lead poisoning. I know people that have elevated lead levels. And you start thinking about taking all that gas to the face, especially I was a machine gunner in the military, right? So I ate a lot of 240, a lot of 240. That's a lot of gas in the face, right? So that's actually on not only a safety reason, like health wise, hearing wise to me, that's something that I'm excited about because it's a high flow device that's going to obviously do the sound thing, but it's also going to save your health to an extent in your ears, obviously your health too. And the more and more I use more and more cans and the more and more different guns I use, like my first thoughts are getting a high flow can rather than like a basic can. And I don't, some people, oh, they don't hide flash as good or they're not as quiet. And I'm like, motherfucker, I'm still wearing ear pro. I'm like, just because your can's hearing safe doesn't mean you're going loud in a house for like 3 mags.
Yeah.
It's just going to take the bite off.
It really, I mean, cans are just loud. Like rifle cartridges. I think the only things that are acceptable would be like a subsonic, but that's just less common.
Yeah.
So the high flow stuff, I think is really interesting. What do you think about 3D printed cans?
I love 3D printing. That's another thing. Like it wasn't on the forefront of my mind when you said, what am I excited about? But I literally get excited every time I see something 3D printed because it is amazing what a guy can do in his basement.
Yeah.
Right. Like seize the means of production. Those blueprints are out there. You can download them and use them. I might start dabbling myself. I don't, but I know I had this conversation with Sean and I'm probably going to start.
Listen, Sean had the conversation, that same fucking conversation with me,
yeah,
and now I have a goddamn, bamboo X1 carbon, and it's absurd. You have to like Google gobble one of us, be one of us.
yeah.
You have to get a printer. It's fucking awesome.
And the cool thing is you can make all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah.
From little parts and pieces to sling retainers to bag riders. Like this, there's this guy Subrev Tech that makes like bag riders, sling retainers, and stuff. And I've been using his kit. The guys from 100 Concepts, little scope caps and things like just amazing little things that you didn't know you needed or wanted until you're like, that is so much better than what we used to do, which was take a piece of cardboard, put 100-mile-an-hour tape around it with some shot cord, and not literally because we had to make our own shit sometimes. Well, these guys came up with a nice little cool cap that looks all cool and goes over there, and they 3D printed the shit in a garage and then made a business out of it. It's like the American dream, right?
You know what I think is really fascinating is, some companies do sell the final product, but others will sell those and they'll sell the files so that you could print it on your own and do some customization if you want to. Like, that shit is unheard of. That's unheard of, man.
That dude from PSR, that guy kills me, man. I finally met him and I talked to him, and there's a very drastic difference in content and age between me and him. And I was sitting there talking to him for a little bit, and I was like, man, I was like, you know what? You're one of the few channels where I'll sit there and watch an entire video because this shit just kills me. Like it makes me laugh so hard. Some of the stuff he does, and it's a friggin' hilarious, man.
I should have him on here. I haven't done that. He is one of the nicer guys out there. Like,
100%.
Love that dude. So we're winding through our time here, and I wanna make sure we hit on everything. You're incorporating the precision stuff. Are you gonna get into? Do you ever see yourself getting into a point where you're doing sort of what admin and Grand Thumb, like bringing a cameraman out to the range and having like a little team? Like, is that the future of Tactical Considerations?
So I actually create the content for Iron Infidel. That's another YouTube channel. And I have a dedicated camera guy and editor for that.
Okay.
And I've used camera guys and editors for my channel before when I was just backed up and couldn't get things done. But I don't know if I want to do that because that's a very different style of content.
Sure.
And
Sure.
It seems to be that stuff goes much more towards the entertainment realm than it does kind of what I do, which is like, hey, more like I would break this if I did this, kind of look to this, because my whole thing is I'm trying to help people get the best they can for their money because they can't afford to buy it twice. And then, of course, if you have the budget, here's a whole lot of shit that's really fun, right?
Sure. Right.
So I don't know if I'll do that. It would be a lot easier, but I don't know. And I don't know if that's something the channel, the viewers, the core viewer would like appreciate, because it seems to be that some viewers like that kind of just raw self-made content, and then other people want that kind of entertainment content.
Yeah, they are very, very different.
Yeah, I was like literally with admin an hour ago, like, and the shit just cracks me up. Like, I love watching that stuff, and it's insane to me having been in a bunch of his videos and seeing them filmed. Like, I'm like, how the fuck did you get that out of what we filmed out there, man? Because these aren't making sense to me. It's awesome. Seriously.
Yeah, you almost have to like think differently about what you're doing. And you have to have a really, really talented cameraman and editor to make that shit come together.
Yeah, his creativity and people that do that is very different than mine. Like, I'm a very mechanical, nuts and bolts, business oriented kind of guy, where they're very like imaginative and things. Like, why I like movies? It's because I can't picture reading books in my head. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. I can't picture that,
I think it's wonderful, man. I am, like I said before, I'm really excited to see whatever starts to come your way. I think what we need to do is get you out and shoot some sporting clays and see if you're terrible at it like most military guys are, because I think that would be a fucking riot.
I'll answer the question for you now. I was shooting clays with Josh, the owner of Radian, and he did nothing but laugh because I couldn't hit a fucking thing because it's the opposite of everything you're taught in the tactical world.
Yeah.
Elbows up, flow in front of the target, keep doing this, do that. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not how you shoot. And I kept missing and missing and missed to the point where I was like bruised because I just wouldn't stop. And I'm shooting like really nice shotguns. Like they had really, really nice high end stuff. And I literally shot those things until I was bruised in the shoulder.
That's fucking
and I suck at it. I absolutely suck at sporting clays. Well,
then we have to get you out there on video being terrible at sporting clays because I think the audience deserves it. I think they do.
I'm gonna get me an over under in practice.
No, no practice.
I won't be made a fool of twice.
Well, dude, I'm excited for you. I think this is going to be rad. Is there anything you want to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Yeah, dude, I super appreciate excuse me, you having me on. I will never forget when I was the YouTuber of the week on TGC. I'll never forget the first time I met you in person. And I'm super thankful to you and all the other YouTube guys that reached out and helped me when I started. And like to the audience, I'm super appreciative of your viewership. It's been shocking to me how kind and selfless and giving the audience and people in the YouTube community and the firearms community are. And I don't think a lot of people understand that, but it's like I've had people welcome me into their homes. People have sent me things just out of the blue. I've had, get well wishes from people that I didn't know, people that I knew, people that I thought I knew. So there's a lot of really good people out there. And I just want to say thank you to all of them because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't get to do all this cool stuff. And I hope that what I do helps them make the right decision or the fun decision or the safe decision sometimes.
Well, like I said before, I appreciate you, man. I mean, you earned being the GunTuber of the week. You earned all of these things by being who you are and being a good dude. And it's gonna be rad the next few years. That's for fucking sure.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, be sure to go over to Camorado.com, CAMORADO. Use the code TGC. Get yourself some fucking camo because it's great. Sea Smoke is my color, but there are many, many others. All kinds of things from mild and usable to ridiculous and fucking stupid. Sean's got it all. Also go to Verdicts, as Mike pronounces it, vertx.com. Do you have a favorite product that they make, Mike?
Actually, it's probably the sock P.
There you go. Get yourself one of those. They're fantastic, and they're actually pretty affordable. I like the organizer stuff for my van, and I think you guys will like it as well. The code is TGC. You'll get at least 15% off. Go do it. Thanks again, Mike. I appreciate you. Thanks to you guys for listening, watching, etc. We'll see y'all soon. Wait for it.